everybody. We are live, and by live, I mean live in Chicago, and live over the internet airwaves via live stream. You are, along with me, very privileged to be in a conversation with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Big thanks to our sponsors, Final Draft, when you need to always have the last word, Final Draft. That is not who they are. All right, I just made that up. We just had a great session with you a couple hours ago, and we got sort of the backstory, and it's amazing. Who doesn't know all the amazing things this guy has done? In the Heights, did a little polish on West Side Story and Working. And like the most fun show I've seen in a very long time, Bring It On. And you may not know, he is the secret weapon behind the Tony Awards. All those fun numbers that everybody raves about how great Neil Patrick Harris is. This man doing it on the fly.
A lot of help.
Every time I watch, I'm like,
How did you do that?
So you're going to tell us today?
Sure.
All right, cool. We're going to start at...
This vodka's amazing.
We're going to start in the middle. We know where you came from. I want to know, what are you doing now? What's got you on fire?
Right now?
Besides this.
Illuminati's Deep Dish Pizza has me on fire right now here in Chicago. But I'm pretty single-mindedly working on this Hamilton musical that I've been working on for about 4 years now. I've been writing it since I was still in Heights, writing backstage when I read this amazing biography by Ron Chernow about the guy on the $10 bill, and just fell in love. His life story resonated with so many of the things I wanted to write about, and it was this sort of side of history I really knew nothing about. I knew he got shot by the vice president, but I mean, Dick Cheney shot a guy while he was vice president. Like, that's a thing. That's nothing new. But I fell in love with his story, and I've been working on it for the past 4 years, and we just did a reading up at New York Stage and Film at Vassar, and sort of presented what we had, which was 1 act and 3 songs in Act 2. There are 30 songs in Act 1. It's a sung through. It's become a sung through and rapped through show, and so that's my life right now.
If you don't mind me delving.
Yeah.
What's the conceit? How are you taking history and putting it in a contemporary form?
Without giving too much away, I'm just doing what everyone else who writes musicals is doing. I'm finding a musical vocabulary to tell this story. For me, hip hop seems like the only way to tell Alexander Hamilton's story, because he is I know you think that's funny. I really don't. Because it's a story about words, and it's a story about using words to save your life and destroy your life. This is a guy who pulled himself out of his circumstances because he wrote a poem about a hurricane that had decimated St. Croix, where he was living. He was 14 years old. He wanted to be anywhere but where he was. He wrote a letter to a friend. The first letter we have from Hamilton says, I know I am said to be building sand castles in the air, but we have seen such schemes successful when the projector is constant. I will conclude by saying that I wish there was a war. This is an intense 14-year-old. And this hurricane destroys the island, and he writes a poem about the damage. And the poem gets used as a way to raise money for relief funds. And people take up a collection to send him to the mainland to get his education, because he's all self-taught. He's reading what he can, where he can. He out-Dickenses any Dickens character you know. And he makes himself indispensable to George Washington because he can write really quickly in English and in French, and becomes Washington's aide-de-camp. All the while, he's lugging books through the Revolutionary War, boning up on monetary history, because he knows we're going to need it, because the currency we made up is worthless, and we're losing because British troops Americans are helping British troops over the revolution because their money means something and ours doesn't. This fear of chaos and basically makes himself indispensable to Washington. He also thinks he's the smartest guy in every room he's in. So he makes enemies of pretty much everybody else. So there's the Constitutional Congress, right? And we're deciding what kind of government we want to have. Hamilton says, this plan is great, and if this is the plan, that's fine. But I have my own idea, and it's five houses of government, and holds forth for 6 hours his own version of what the American government should look like. Half the room goes, this kid is a genius. Half the room, Ben Franklin's sitting in there somewhere going, what is this? And so we see him sort of make and destroy his career by his own sort of strength of speech and strength of character.
Cool.
And that to me is Tupac.
Yeah.
It's this just relentless torrent of words, some of which are incredible, but also this massive contradiction. Some of his songs are, you know, a beautiful ode to his mother, like Dear Mama. Then the next one will be Hit 'Em Up, where he takes out every other rapper working, saying fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And these contradictions are all in Hamilton too.
Sounds amazing. I can't wait. Now, you're driving this. Do you have co-conspirators?
I do. I have been working with Tommy Kail, who directed In the Heights, and you know, I was working very much by myself, and I was writing at the frantic pace of a song a year, and, and Tommy heard I played Tommy what I'd written so far, and he said, "There's no reason you shouldn't be writing this faster." And like we did on Heights, we started just setting these deadlines. And it's been a very weird road with Hamilton because we kind of showed everyone the ultrasound before there was any hint of a baby. Like in the top of the first trimester, you know, I performed the first song from the show at the White House, and that's become its own viral YouTube thing. That was the only thing I had written, and that was the first public performance of it. But the White House called and said, we're doing this evening of spoken word poetry. You can do something from In the Heights if you want, but do you have anything on the American experience? And I had a Hot 16 about Hamilton. That was all I had. and so it was, and I just felt like, well, what better place to debut something that's about this country? And so, you know, that went viral in its own way. I've talked to lots of teachers who use that in their classroom. And to prep them for their American history seminars, and I just want to say, wait, that's just the first song in the show. So I'm, you know, I've just been doing my best to sort of finish it, and so we, you know, New York Stage and Film was one benchmark, and we're continuing to set deadlines so that we have a show hopefully by next year.
Nice. Now, did you put that out there to light a fire to say, I'm doing this, and it's out in the world now, and now I have to finish it?
I honestly, a couple of weird, yes, in one sense, but I didn't know, for instance, that HBO filmed that evening. They were following two of their poets who were also performing, and that's why that footage looks like it's out of some surreal movie about my life, as opposed to just like stock footage of a White House performance. It's HBO edited and put it together and put it online. I didn't know that was going to happen going in. I just knew that I think the president will like this. And I didn't know anything else sort of going in. So that was all sort of a happy accident. But yes, I very much need deadlines to write. And with this one, the deadlines have all been weirdly public, which is scary, you know, because people have known about it a long time, and you know, you want to live up to that. But at the same time, it's just the way this one is. You know, some pregnancies are difficult. Some pregnancies are like, oh, I'm in my third trimester, and I just found out I was pregnant. And this one's just been really. I started showing really early, and that's just what it is. So you kind of just have to go with it.
I don't think we've talked about collaboration a lot. You obviously have some people you trust. How did you find them? When did you know?
I was very lucky to find Tommy Kail early in my career, at the dawn of my career, really. So I started writing Heights most people know this, so I'm going to say it quick. But I started writing Heights as a project in school, in college. And I had a recording of that and a script. And two kids who were seniors at the time, Neil Stewart and John Mailer, Norman Mailer's youngest son, saw that show and were committed to starting their own theater company when they moved to New York, which was going to be that year. I went on and I put In the Heights in a drawer and kept writing and acting and stuff through college. And they started that company with Tommy Kail. So Tommy had 2 years of listening to my college version of In the Heights on his own and making notes, and he was aware of it before I was aware of him. And true to their word, the week I graduated, they got in touch with me and said, we're still interested in Heights. Happy graduation, come meet us. We're building a black box theater in the basement of the Drama Bookshop. The Arthur Seeland Theater, which is down there, was a storeroom. And they basically said, hey, we'll turn this into a theater and you can have all the money from it if we can have a clubhouse, which was very smart of them. And so I was in there when it was still just a storeroom. And Tommy, with 2 years of wanting to talk to me, but I don't know why he didn't talk to me, sort of said, Usnavi's an interesting character, but he's only in 2 scenes. He could be your narrator because all the stories go through his store. And Washington Heights is a really cool song, but it's third. It should be first. It establishes your world. And sort of hit me with where. And again, this is where time is your friend and everything has to happen at the right time. If he had said that to me after my sophomore year, after having just seen it, I would have said, this is a crazy person. And I think I've written the best thing possible, because at that point in my life I'd sort of put everything I know into it. When he came at me with all his ideas, I said, 1, this guy is really smart and all of his ideas would make this show better. And 2, I had 2 years of distance and perspective. And I'm sure you have all learned this, but there's the thing of when you let someone in to see your work, and when you let someone say it, because you let them in too soon and they say something and that kind of kills the thing. It's really to be protected. And I had the benefit of 2 years distance on the show. It had been sitting in a drawer. And so I was really ready to hear any and all ideas on how to make it better. And I knew this guy was the guy to get me there. And that conversation that started the week after I graduated continued another 6 years. And as we worked through the show. And again, we were very lucky to find producers that take chances on new work. Kevin and Jeffrey have sort of made a career out of finding the Jonathan Larsons and Bobby Lopez and Jeff Marxes of the world who have, they're untested, but they have a good idea and they're willing to work hard and getting behind that. And they found us. And Tommy proving himself every step of the way, because, a lot of times you'll be paired with a more experienced director. And Tommy just kept proving himself every time he had the chance to direct a piece. So he came along with the work because he added value to it. He was really an unofficial dramaturg, and when Chiara came on board in 2004, helped us all triangulate and did the thing that you hear John Kander and Fred Ebb say about Hal Prince when he's directing their shows. You talk and you talk and you talk until you're all writing the same show. And that's when musicals go off the rails, when the music and the story don't necessarily match, or this person wanted to write this and they've made a Frankenstein instead of a beautiful thing. And so Tommy's really good at that, and so he's been a really indispensable ally in that respect.
Nice. Now, when you were working it through and developing, I'm sure that these producers weren't the only opportunity.
No.
Who did you have to say no? Not naming names, but tell me about saying no to somebody that you were like, this is the biggest mistake, or I know I'm even though everybody's telling me it's the biggest mistake, I know I'm.
Yeah, I mean, I could name producers that who said, it's a really strong musical vocabulary, but we gotta up the stakes. And up the stakes, if you're dealing with a Latino show, is make Nina pregnant or involve a drug, some kind of drug plot. Because that's what the producers who were talking to me see on the news when they hear about Washington Heights. They don't hear the good stories that come from Washington Heights. They hear about the bad stuff on the crime blotter. And really, not only producers but composers who saw the work would say the exact same thing. Where are the stakes? Where are Where are the drugs? Where's the crime? Which no one says to Woody Allen when he's doing his New York. I've been mugged once, and it was on the Upper East Side in Woody Allen's New York. So I don't know what that's about. Well, I know exactly what it's about. And so you know what Kevin and Jeffrey are really good about doing is saying, write the best version of your show, and this is what doesn't work for us, but they're very rarely prescriptive. They don't say you need a prostitute. They don't say you need this in Act 2. What they say is this works, this works, this works, this doesn't work, fix it. And then trust us to fix it and make it better and tell us what they think is missing. And it's very collaborative in that sense. And again, Tommy being great about writing the world, and then also finding Chiara, who was writing these beautiful plays about her family and her community in Northern Philly. So that was also a really great marriage, because she doesn't shy away from any of the complications of Latino immigrant life in these struggling neighborhoods, but she also finds the beauty and truth of it. And if you're writing from a place of love, you know, writing about this neighborhood it can be a joyful thing, and that's what I think. I think that's what people take away from the show is people have this feeling of I either long for a community like that, or I relate to one of these characters because somewhere along the line, whether it was me or whether it was a parent or a grandparent, someone sacrificed so I could do better, or I'm killing myself so that my kid can do better. I think that is something any parent or child can relate to, and we deal with various iterations of that story all through the plot of Heights.
Now, was your goal always to be in the show?
No. I always did I did Usnavi in all of the readings and workshops because it was just the heaviest lifting and it was the most to teach. So it made Tommy's job easier for me to play Usnavi and then charmingly tiptoe around the plot holes or whatever we hadn't solved yet as the writer while we focused on the other actors and getting them sort of involved in the world. The way Tommy put it was like, you'll play Usnavi for now, and we'll get a real actor later. And that's fine. And that's fine because, you know, as you can see from my manic public energy, that's you know, it works. It works for the character. And so, you know, when we met Kevin and Jeffrey, you know, Kevin, I was still doing book music and lyrics at this point, and it was becoming an operetta because I know how to solve problems musically. I know how to solve dramatic problems musically. That's my thing that I'm good at. When it becomes dialogue, it's like all efficiency leaves, and I don't have that gift, and Chiara very much has that gift. And so, you know, Kevin has said here's Kevin, producer of Rent, producer of Avenue Q, which is in previews at this point in 2003. And he says, I don't know what this story is, and I don't think you do either, but I love the musical language, and I like you as that guy. And so I sort of fell in the snowball as it rolled down the hill. And so, yeah. And I'd always acted and written in equal measure in high school and in college. I'd write a show every year, but I would also act in other people's things because it just helped my writing. Like they feed each other. I mean, they're two sides of the same coin. So it wasn't like, getting the stage manager who doesn't want to be on stage and shoving him on stage. I had experience, but it was a very happy accident.
Well, yeah, happy for us. No, I mean. Who's seen In the Heights? Who's seen it 3 times? All right. One of my beloved childhood experiences you got a chance to get involved with and just refresh it. So much delight to revisit Electric Company.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to talk about that.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, that was great. Like, I grew up with Electric Company too, and in my house, Rita Moreno is a patron saint. So the fact that we got asked, it was not just me, but this hip hop improv group I'm involved with. We were sort of involved in the creation of the first test pilot, and then we weren't as involved as the show became what it is and moved forward, the revamped Electric Company. But we still got called on to write songs. Bill Sherman, who did the co-orchestrations for In the Heights was the musical director. So he would call and say, we need 4 songs. There's a rap about hard G and soft G, a song about silent E, and they're a joy to write. And now he's a music director at Sesame Street. So I write a song or 2 a year. When Bill calls me and says, Grover has to rap about being friends, and so he calls me, and it is a joy. The best thing, and this is like one of those things that unexpected gifts that happen because of the circumstances. When you write for Sesame Street, they send you this PDF that is the vocal ranges of all of the Muppets. So, like Grover can't sing above a D and can't sing below, a middle C, whereas Big Bird has this range, and you can't write one note outside of that range. And it's super fun to sort of the challenge of like, man, I gotta write for over. And so anytime those assignments come up, I'm happy to sort of put everything to the side and write them.
Would you give us a little demo, maybe?
Oh, gosh. I'm trying to think of one that was the piano here.
Oh.
But there's Silent E is a Ninja is the one I wrote the fastest, and that is the one that most people's kids know. And it's about the fact that E jumps on the ends of words and changes the pronunciation. It was like, Silent E is a ninja, Silent E is a ninja. I didn't notice when he came. I cannot accept any praise or blame. And then it just like goes on to like all these words, and then like the E comes in, changes the meaning, that gets like escapes. So that for some reason. I was walking my dog in the park about a month ago, and this kid started following me, this like 13-year-old kid. And I finally stopped and said, hi. And he said, Silent E is a ninja? and I went, where'd he go? Where'd he go? And he was like, where'd he go? And walked the other way. It was great. It was great.
Now, you used to teach.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss it?
I do. My first job out of college was teaching 7th grade English at my old high school. And I taught, and it was fantastic because I had just gotten out of there. It was 4 years in college, and then I'm back in my school. All my teachers are there, and suddenly you're at drinks after parent-teacher conferences with your teachers, which is great because some of them are much cooler than you thought they were when you were a student, and some of them are just as crazy as you thought they were, even crazier. So that was enormously fun. But what I loved most about it is that moment when a kid sort of grasps an idea and wraps their head around it. And it's sort of, my learning curve on teaching was it's the opposite of performing, actually. A lot of people think it's this performative thing, but when you're really doing your job as a teacher, you're talking very little. You're prodding just enough to get the kids engaged with each other. And you're just kind of keeping the ball in the air when the volleyball goes to the side. And the learning curve from, hi, I'm Lin Miranda, I'm your teacher, to like really just sort of lobbing a question and just watching them engage each other and sort of tease out what they're learning in discussion was a real joy. So I was asked to do it again the second year. I did it for a year, and they asked me to come back, and it was one of those, I could see myself being very happy doing this for the rest of my life, so I'm going to stop right now, because I don't want to Mr. Holland it out, and think about what might have been. And I took the much scarier road of being like a broke writer for a very long time, and substituting, being a professional sub at Hunter for a long time, but also just doing whatever I had to do to pay rent.
Wow. Let's have some questions.
It's your time, guys.
Yeah. Hit me. Somebody, anybody. We've got a microphone. We're recording this, so if you don't mind stepping up.
Hi. I'm a big fan of hip-hop as well, and I just wanted to ask you kind of what you think about the current state of hip-hop music, and also why you feel like it hasn't been more prevalent in musical theater, because you see some, but not a lot, and it feels like they're very complementary forms. Just kind of what you think about the intersection of those two things.
That's a great question, and I agree with you that they're complementary forms. I think the things I love best about hip-hop music are some of the things I like best about musical theater, which is sometimes this verbal dexterity that takes you to this other emotional place. And when married with the right music, transports you. I think that's what musical theater and hip-hop do best, and they both do it the best. You know, in terms of the current, I think, and I hope you agree, that the music that you end up writing resembles the music that mattered to you the most when you were a teenager, because you had the most hormones coursing through your veins, and it's when you just felt the most. And so I listen to a lot of modern hip hop, and I listen to what's on the radio, but my heart is in 1993 because I was 13. But that also happened to be a very interesting time for hip hop because it was sort of the last. It was just before The Chronic came out, and when there were #1 hits that were not all gangster rap songs. There was PM Dawn, there was Arrested Development, there was A Tribe Called Quest, there was Common. There was this sort of feeling that it could go anywhere, and then The Chronic sort of was such a massive crossover hit that became the dominant sound for a very long time. Not that those other forms didn't still exist, but that was what ruled the radio. I think that what's on the radio and what's being made are two very different things. I still think there's a lot of really exciting hip-hop. You guys are probably not hip to this, but right now in the hip-hop world, Kendrick Lamar just released this verse on a mixtape where he names every other rapper, and he says, "I respect y'all, but I'm trying to murder you with every track I do." Which is really kind of unprecedented in hip-hop, because I think one of the lessons of the 90s were people would take it very personally, and there was real physical violence associated with these songs that were being released. And this was a really interesting gauntlet that was thrown down. He said, lyrically, I think you're all great, but I'm trying to be the best. What are you trying to do? And so it made it about lyrical wordplay, and rappers started answering the next day with songs, and that's really exciting. So I'm excited about that because I think that moves the art form forward in a way that's positive. And Big Daddy Kane wrote an amazing tweet about it. He said, "I love that hip hop can be a competitive sport. I just don't want it to be a contact sport." And I think that says it perfectly. But yeah. That's my thoughts on hip-hop right now.
Very cool.
Might be dated in 5 minutes.
Lynn, I have a question. Regarding the bilingual aspect of your musical, how much of that, did you have to change anything, and did you have to pull anything out from the original, or was that ratio of the Spanish-English pretty much the way it was originally presented?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by originally presented. You know, we probably doubled the amount of Spanish between off-Broadway and Broadway, which is sort of an interesting thing because it seems counterintuitive, right? Like, quote-unquote Broadway, quote-unquote Broadway audience, make it accessible to everyone. That being said, another one of the fun things about writing Heights specifically was you're dealing with a bilingual neighborhood. So we get to play with two languages. And my #1 job is to make the audience feel taken care of no matter who they are. So generally, even though there's lots of Spanish sections, you're getting the English translation or you're getting the gist of it right away. And it's built into the DNA of the piece, you know, and the fun of trying to rhyme Spanish with English, and doing our best to marry those two things, and making that another choice, right? So, you know, the old adage in musicals is when we're feeling too much to speak, we sing, and when we're feeling too much to sing, we dance, and adding when we're feeling too much to sing, we rap, and adding when we're feeling too much to sing in English, we sing in Spanish. It's just sort of like, you know, adding a couple of sides to the die. And so that was really fun to play with. You know, contrast that with my work on West Side Story, which I was asked to do by Arthur Lawrence. And, you know, it's one thing when it's built into the DNA of the piece. It's another thing when you're touching a masterpiece that people really like, myself included. I don't think I ever would have undertaken it had it not been the creators of the show themselves being involved. But, you know, we did the experiment. I adapted I Feel Pretty, the Shark section of the quintet, and A Boy Like That, I Have a Love. And by the end of the Broadway run, Just I Feel Pretty was in Spanish because the audience was like, why are you messing with our show? And there was a lot of pushback. And I think we assumed everyone knows West Side Story. It's the closest thing to canon, to legend we have. But there were a lot of people who wanted to see a production like they had done in their high school or like they had experienced in the movie version and really didn't want that messed with. And I get that. Like, I don't take any, I don't take it personally. It was an amazing experience to work with those people, and I'd do it all again. But again, whereas something we just accepted with Heights because it's sort of marbled into the recipe, it's different when you're messing with something people really know and really takes to heart.
But it's on the recording,
Yeah, it's on the recording.
and you got to hear it.
It's pretty nuts.
Hi, Lynn. I'm someone who played Maria West Side Story like 3 times as a little Iowa farm girl. So it's a really special musical to me. And I grew up teaching little kids on the farm that someday they could do musical theater too. So I moved to New York City, and I moved to Inwood. And I remember, and this is about 10 years ago, and you're one of my heroes because I'm a musical theater writer. I wrote book, lyrics, and choreograph and teach just like you. So people in the hood would say, yeah, Lynn's doing a show. I mean, they knew of you on the street, Broadway, just, where the train and Broadway, where all those little shops.
Untitled?
I lived, They were like, yeah, he's gonna be famous. He's gonna be.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can give you their names. And I'm like, he is gonna be famous. And I saw your first workshop
Oh, fantastic.
of In the Heights. And I'm like, he is gonna be famous.
Oh.
So I tell your story to I live in Chicago now.
Fantastic.
And I just finished my PhD. And I tell people your story that are kids all the time. I'm like, you know what? You can write book, music, and lyric. It might take 20 years. But I know there's a show, and so you're an example, like lots of people in the room. But I had to tell you that story. And then I got to meet West Side Story Arthur Lawrence.
Yeah.
And saw the preview of West Side Story. And I said, he's doing it again.
Well, I'll tell you why that story's so crazy to me. You know, when Heights came out, there were a lot of sort of news pieces or even Broadway news pieces where they'd say, all right, well, the pitch was always, let's walk around your Washington Heights. And I was like, okay, if you want. And I think they expected I'd walk into places and people would be like, oh, snobby! Like it is in the show.
Right.
And that's not, I'm not really a Dominican bodega owner.
No.
I'm a writer. So I'm the
Right.
guy who no one knows.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the corner with a notepad while cab drivers are talking and while people are living their lives. I'm the one who is silent.
Yeah.
And I think, the reporter is always crestfallen, like, I wish you knew more people in this neighborhood. I was like, I know them, but they just don't know who I am or what I'm doing here. I'm just sitting in the corner, and that's our
They
life.
claim you, though, so just so you
Yeah.
know, act
No,
like
I'm very proud they claim me. And
Yeah, that's
I
pretty
still live up there, so,
Yeah.
it's nice.
Yeah, I go there all. Nice job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi.
Could you address the true rhyme versus the near rhyme, which you're very
Yeah,
good at?
sure.
Broadway for decades was all about the true rhyme, and pop music back in the day, in the jazz era, was all about the true rhyme as well. And then even early rock and roll had the true rhyme, but most pop music, be it R&B or country music or pop or power pop or hip hop, it's the near rhyme is really the art of how
Yeah.
you do that. So, but in Broadway, there's these purists, and so how do you work with that? And how do you, and also you're trying to get the story across, so the true rhyme does help people connect with it. So how do you work with that?
That's a great question. I touched on it a little bit in the other panel, but I'm really glad you asked it. The purists just don't like me. And that's okay. That's okay. I think there's a couple of things. I think there are things that people have been handed as lore, right? There is the I Want song. There is the 11 o'clock number. And there is this notion that true rhyme is the only rhyme that makes any sense in the theater, which has just been disproven by every writer working in the theater. I think there are, it's really interesting. There is this sort of feeling that rhyme denotes intellect, right? There's Sondheim always complains about his I Feel Pretty, like how is she doing these Noel Coward-esque internal rhymes? She's an immigrant, she's just gotten here. and there's, I get that. At the same time, there are so many rappers who are doing such incredible things with the English language who do not have a college education. And it's about fun with language. And through my own personal history with family members who speak English and Spanish, the fun you can have with syntax and the fun you can have with words, it's so much bigger than a pure rhyme versus not a pure rhyme. And there's also, you know, what I talked about in the other panel is threading the needle. In musical theater, we reward the pure rhyme that lands with a satisfying snap. But the other half of that people don't talk about is it's also got to be unexpected, and it's also got to be surprising. And I think people lose the forest for the trees with that. And with hip hop, often the unexpected rhyme or the near rhyme is rewarded as being outside of the box thinking, and you know, sometimes it falls flat and sometimes it doesn't, but delivery is a big part of whether it works or not. So In the Heights, I'm trying to write lyrics that will satisfy a musical theater fan who will say there's craft here, but also the hip hop fan who says all these rhymes are Moon June, who thinks true rhyme is actually boring. And so I was very conscious of that with Heights, of when to choose my battles, when to do pure rhyme, when to break it, when to do near rhyme, and it's something I've you know, sort of doubled in intensity on this Hamilton project I'm working on, because there's a lot more hip hop lyrics, and there's a lot more internal assonance, and there's just lots more work, but I think people use there's no true rhyme as a shorthand for there's no craft there. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that you should break the rhyme, but you got to have a damn good reason to do it. And I think that's an important lesson that gets lost in the shuffle of true rhyme or get out.
Now
So that thus endeth the lesson on true rhyme.
Now you did In the Heights for how many performances?
I did the show the first year, and then I did it in LA and Puerto Rico on the tour, and then I did the last 2 weeks to close it out.
Was there a rhyme that night after night tickled you every time you did it? That you were like, come on, fess up.
Well, the first thing that sprang to mind, and again, not a pure rhyme, is me and the GWB thinking, G Nina, what'll you be? I just really liked the way that sat. It said exactly what she needed to say, you know, I was also in the bodega, so I got to like watch her do it. You know, that's the other thing. I had the perspective of the show for a year as someone inside it. It's which is very different from getting to watch your show. So there's whole sections of this show when I go to see a student production or someone's invited me to the production, I go, oh yeah, I was backstage going to the bathroom because that was the only time I could do it. So it's fun to rediscover the show in that way. Nice.
I was just wondering, one of the things I love about the In the Heights score is that it incorporates pop and hip hop genres, but it's still at its core a theatrical score, which is what I find so interesting about it. And I feel like that's what makes the hip hop aspects, all the rapping, all that. I feel like that's what makes it work. I was just wondering. I've noticed a trend in some Broadway shows. I can't name any off the top of my head right now, but that are heavy on the pop, but not so much on the theatrical. So I was wondering what your advice would be to up-and-coming composers who want to incorporate pop more successfully in a theatrical score.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the kind of music I write is very much informed by the kind of music I grew up listening to, so that has a contemporary sound to it. I come by it honestly, and I think any writer just should come by their work honestly, whether they're working in a genre or regardless. Like, it's got to come from your kishkas, right? And so, sorry to use Yiddish. So, you know, I see what you're saying. I think that one of the things that so gets lost in the shuffle and is so, we learn it when we learn Peter and the Wolf in 5th grade, is like every character's got their own rhythm and every character's got their own internal combustion engine, and I very much write from that place. When Usnavi enters, he's got an energy and he's got a tempo and a musical language, and then Abuela's like old school Cuban, and she's got her tempo and she's got her thing, and when they sing together, those tempos mash together and it makes its own song. It sounds simple, but you'd be amazed how many writers, particularly first-time writers, and so that's why it happens, just sort of throw songs at situations without regard to, well, why does he sing like this, or why does she sing like that? It's the reason 95% of jukebox musicals don't work. You haven't solved the initial question of why everyone sounds like this catalog, right? Like, why do they all sound like that? You know, Jersey Boys is ingenious because that's the story of their ascendance, and the music is organically coming out of their rise. But you know, I've seen workshops of, I won't name names, but I've seen workshops of jukebox musicals of pop catalogs, and it's like, well, why do they all sound like this pop artist whose music you're doing? And you haven't answered the central dramatic question. Do we live in a world where he's God, and that's why they all sound like him? You know, if you're choosing this artist, there must be some sort of variety in their work that, okay, you know, this era of this artist's life sounds like this character. Like, you've got to do that work of, you know, the musicals I love, like, there's that character song, and every time they come in, they've got that energy, and they're bringing it to the story. And that's what people forget. They just sort of throw songs at the story, as opposed to really delving into doing the playwright work of delving into character. How does this person tick? And then how is that expressed musically? That's what's missing.
Nice. One more. Oh, uh-oh. Throw down.
You're the book writer, you're the lyricist, you're the composer. What comes first when you're in your process?
Hamilton is the first thing where I'm doing all three, and that's because it's sung through. We actually, Tommy and I went down the road with a playwright for a bit, and we realized there's so much hip hop and heightened speech that this was going to be a sung through project, and I didn't want to work with a great playwright and not get to hear any of their words. So I sort of took up the mantle of doing all three with this one. And again, if we're extending the pregnancy metaphor to its logical, torturous extreme, I was already way too pregnant with the show to sort of begin working with another writer on this particular project. It always starts with character and with the situation. And then music and lyrics come in when they come in. Every single song is different, and I'll say my favorite Leonard Cohen quote, which is, you know, being a songwriter is like being a nun. You're married to a mystery, and your job is to create this thing, and you don't know, you know, at every stage you don't know what's going to come first. The situation may suggest an urgency and a tempo, and you start from the tempo and work backwards. You know, with Bring It On, that was set in the world of cheerleading. So really, I built that score by Andy singing a tempo at me and an energy at me, and writing down what he did. And Andy's if you know Andy Blankenbuehler, he's a very expressive guy, and it has to feel like ka-ka-ka-ka-ka. And I would write down, and I would notate ka-ka-ka-ka. At the tempo he spat it at me, that would be the first thing on the page, and I build from that. And he'd go, how'd you know what I wanted? And I go, because I wrote down the gibberish you yelled at me. And started there. And so it very much felt of a piece with the energy he was trying to bring in. With Heights, we had these, you know, we were trying to figure out how to figure out the story, the language, and the characters all at the same time. So it took a longer time because you'd write this great song and it derailed three things in Act 2. It was like a 12-sided Rubik's Cube. And then with Hamilton, I have this great narrative spine of this guy's life, and the torturous part is what to omit, and you know what moves us forward. What this guy is relentless. He lives in turbo. He never stops. He slept 3 hours a night, and he's verbose. So it's like you got to fill that machine. So it's been a lot of Sweeney Todd and Gypsy for me, because those are musicals that are built around a personality. The structure is Gypsy's this whirling dervish, and she's going to go. You know, Mama Rose is going to go, and everyone's reacting to what she's going to do next. And so that's how I'm sort of approaching Hamilton. Is this guy's going to go whether you're with him or you're not, and it's both inspiring and terrifying and intimidating to all of the other opposing forces in his life.
We are out of time. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. You can ask afterwards. All right.
I'll answer it real fast.
Thank you. As another former teacher turned starving writer, how are you currently, or how would you like to be helping other early career artists move into the field? And sort of as a corollary to that, do you think there's a best way to do that?
There's no shortcut for writing. You know, I am, because I never got enough hugs as a child, I'm quite addicted to Twitter. It's an audience whenever I want. And so I get a lot of variations on that question, and you have to write, and you have to write and write and write and write, and you will write through your bad stuff, and you will write through your good stuff, and you write your way back to bad stuff. But you got to have something to show. And I think that's the number one step. You know, people come up to me and they go, I have this idea for a musical. It's like, well, you can't show me your idea. You can show me your musical, and you can show me a demo of songs. But you know, I think what I love are things like this. You know, I've been attending panels all day. My brain is still burning from John Weidman's Writing History seminar at 3 o'clock, and listening to Theresa Rebeck's stories of writing in Hollywood this morning. And so, you know, take solace in your fellow writers and find those like-minded souls. I'm so grateful Steve Schwartz is sitting here, who is, you know, in addition to being the inspiration that he is, you know, when we were working on Heights, Alex Lackamore, our music director, was the conductor at Wicked. So I learned more about orchestrating by sitting in the pit at Wicked, which I did about 10 times, just sitting next to the guitarist, figuring out how a pit worked, and figuring out how this amazing score was spread across these instruments. I owe him an invaluable debt for that, and a million other things. But you know, take solace in each other and have fun this weekend. Thanks for coming.
Very cool. Lin-Manuel Miranda.